What is death penalty? The death penalty is the cruelest, most inhumane, and most demeaning form of punishment, regardless of who is accused, the nature or circumstances of the crime, guilt or innocence or manner of execution. For some crimes in Malaysia, the death penalty is imposed as a mandatory or exclusive punishment. Before imposing a sentence, a court does not have the authority to give a lower term or to consider factors such as the circumstances in which the crime was committed or the background of the offender. Capital punishment in Malaysia is a legal penalty, though a moratorium is in force since 2018. Murder, drug trafficking, treason, acts of terrorism, waging war against the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, and since 2003, rape resulting in death or rape of child were among the 33 capital offences prosecuted in Malaysia, and hanging is the method of execution. With ongoing efforts to remove the capital penalty as a mandatory sentence, such as a measure introduced by the Malaysian government in October 2018, these extreme crimes may only be sentenced to death in a high court setting. The government also announced a halt on all executions until the death penalty is abolished in October 2018. The government, on the other hand, indicated in March 2019 that the death sentence will not be abolished. On December 10, 2019, the Law Minister indicated that a proposal on alternative to the death penalty, providing judges discretion in some serious crimes, would be submitted in January 2020. The practice of mandatory capital penalty was formally abolished on June 10, 2022. Why death penalty is needed in Malaysia? Some people will say that all criminals deserve to be punished and only criminals deserve to be punished. Criminals deserve to be punished in proportion to the severity of their crime. This argument asserts that true justice necessitates people suffering for their transgression and suffering in a manner commensurate with the offense. Each criminal should receive the punishment that their crime merits, and in the case of a murderer, that punishment is death. This argument appeals to a lot of people's natural sense of justice. The argument, an eye for an eye, is frequently used to defend it. Nevertheless, there are also arguments against this statement. Capital punishment is a morally questionable concept since it is a kind of revenge rather than retribution. The anticipation of the criminal's suffering, which could last for many years if he or she is placed on death row, makes the penalty more terrible than simply depriving the offender of his or her life. Furthermore, some capital crimes are committed while the culprit is in such an emotional condition that he or she does not consider the possible consequences. Let's move on to the next point. Does death penalty reduce crime? There is no credible evidence exists that the death penalty is more effective than long jail sentences in deterring crime. Death penalty legislation do not result in decreased crime or murder rates in states that do not have them. Moreover, states that have abolished the death penalty report no substantial increases in crime or murder rates. There is no deterrence impact of the death penalty. Social science research has thoroughly debunked claims that each execution prevents a specific number of homicides. People commit murders primarily out of rage. While inebriated or under the influence of drugs or alcohol, or because they are mentally ill, with little or no consideration for the potential implications of their actions. Consequently, only a few murderers plan ahead of time for their crimes. Hence, if execution is unacceptable, what is the alternative? It is incapacitation. Incapacitation refers to the act of making an individual incapable of committing a crime. In many countries and states that have abolished the capital penalty, convicted murderers can be sentenced to life in prison. For murder, the majority of state laws allowed for life terms with little or no chance of release. Instead of the death penalty, 37 states now enable juries to sentence defendants to life in prison without the prospect of parole. In Malaysia, We have discovered numerous violations of the right to a fair trial. Defendants who cannot afford or employ their own lawyers are frequently left unrepresented during police interrogations, and if they do not know Bahasa Malaysia, they may be denied interpretation, while credible complaints of torture and other ill treatment at the hands of authorities abound. In short, every human being has an inherent right to life, and governments must preserve lives rather than take them. This right is recognized by international law for all human beings, without any distinctions, including those suspected or convicted of the most serious crimes.